Jeffrey Epstein really opened up the market, and we don't want to disrupt the flow.
Let's check in on Daily Wire's Michael Knowles. This guy is a font of.
Speaking of great broadcasting talent.
Effing dumb. Jesus. You know what's amazing? It's just how stupid these guys are. Like, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to read like 3 or 4 things to get a sense of like, what does it mean to have a pandemic? Effing idiots. Here's Michael Knowles, the Daily Wire, claiming that we don't need to have people forced to stay at home to save lives. Magic exists.
You ever remember Michael Knowles' acting reel?
Yes.
Yeah, that's relevant to this too. He
sweet.
tells on himself because he's talking about LA, which is a nice little flourish here. Sorry for everyone in the chat.
Same way I remember Ben Shapiro's sitcom that never got off the ground.
Yeah, we don't, as a country, we don't know what we missed with that.
Yeah, politically correct.
Close out that McConnell hits thing that is screwing up your browser.
It must be that.
I like this. This is real-time production. Everybody should learn to take things a little bit more slow. It's going to be one of the lessons we need to take out of this pandemic.
Just play it out of the Slack, but it's...
Oh, you got it. You got it. You got it.
Less than half of adults in Los Angeles right now are currently employed. Now, you might just say that's L.A. because it's a city full of actors and writers, and they're not the most employed people ever. Well, that's not quite right. They're not employed in the careers that they pretend that they're doing, but they often are employed. They're waiting tables, they're Uber drivers, they're assistants, they're doing jobs in L.A., and now half of them are not because this town is...
I just, who is he talking to? Why isn't he not looking? Is he talking to us? Why is he looking off? Why is the camera over there? I don't get this style of shooting. It seems like maybe his camera person's unemployed too. Go ahead.
Shut down. Film production is shut down, okay? That's a lot of people in one of the major American cities. Specifically, over 1.3 million LA residents who were employed just a few weeks ago are no longer employed. That destroys lives, okay? Especially when it lasts for a long time. It's not just the money. It's not just even the work. It's not even just the self-esteem. Higher unemployment numbers mean higher death numbers. When I'm saying we're comparing the effects of the shutdown, what if we had the shutdown, what if we don't have the shutdown, we can get right down to brass tacks, the number of people who will die. Because increasingly it is appearing that the lockdown...
First off, it is true that unemployment is associated with higher mortality rates. But we don't know if that's because people who are unemployed start to feel discouraged. Maybe they drink more. Maybe they get more involved in drugs. Maybe they look around and they see other people getting careers and being discouraged. We really don't know what the impact of unemployment because of a pandemic where everybody is in the same boat, staying at home, where you don't look out and go like, look at all those people having fun out there. We don't know. We really don't know. But let's let him continue.
What if we had the shutdown? What if we don't have the shutdown? We can get right down to brass tacks, the number of people who will die. Because increasingly it is appearing that the lockdowns are not saving any lives. Because with or without the lockdowns, people who are frail and older can just stay home. They don't have to go out.
So wait a second. So if you're frail and older, you don't have to go out. You have to have no contact with people. Presumably that's also maybe could be associated with higher death rates too, just like unemployment. But the idea that the lockdowns are not saving any lives is just, I mean, it's laughable. It's insanity. It's total insanity.
Even just historically, reading about other pandemics. In some ways, it's terrifying how little has changed. But it's like, what did people do? They stayed inside. Yeah. They distanced from each other. Like, this is just what you do. This is how you don't have the hospital system in New York completely collapse on itself. Also, whatever. It's a broken record. But it always has to be said that this is the most solvable problem in the world. Give everybody $2,000 a month, suspend rent, take care of other basic necessities, and everybody can have food and shelter and wait it out. And I have no doubt that most people would be extremely emotionally satisfied to play their part in combating this, not risk their lives themselves, and eat and take care of their families. This is really not that complicated.
I'm going to read a clip from Joe Wiesenthal's email thing. He is the, I think he's the editor at Bloomberg Business. Mm-hmm. Something people should understand about this current U.S. economic crisis that is in large part a policy choice.
Right.
People joining food lines all around the country is the result of a policy choice, not to supply laid off workers with more income or easy enough access to income from the government. The spiraling number of small business closing up shop is the result of a policy choice to cap the level of payroll support, turning the program into a de facto lottery. In other words, there's 30 million small businesses out there, and about 1 to 2 million got relief in the last version of the relief bill. The wave of state and local austerity we're already seeing, Los Angeles is the latest, they're talking about major budget cuts, same with New York, is due to a policy choice not to include ample money for municipal funding in any of the emergency spending bills that we've seen so far. Of course, the social distancing demands create an exceptionally difficult and disruptive situation for everyone. But the attendant level of economic devastation that this has caused was a choice. Oh. The federal government isn't anywhere close to exhausting its fiscal capabilities to supply the private, state, and local sectors with replacement income for the duration of the public health emergency. The reasons behind these choices are different and complex. However, the economist J.W. Mason nailed it in one aspect in a blog post writing, it seems like one of the deepest lessons of the crisis is that a system organized around the threat of withholding people's subsistence will deeply resist measures to guarantee it, even when particular circumstances make that necessary for the survival of the system of itself. So people understand what that means.
Yep.
You cannot in any way show people that there is another way of organizing society, even if it means the success of the society as it stands now. And the bottom line is, it's funny, like when this was right at the end of the primary, I would go on MSNBC quite a bit. And this stuff was starting to happen in Italy. And I remember talking to Chris Hayes during a break at one point, and we were both like, this could be worse here for two reasons. One, we don't have the social cohesion to get people to actually take the measures you need to stay inside for an extended period of time. And more importantly, we don't have the social infrastructure that exists in place to deal with the fallout of this stuff, i.e., we don't have health insurance for people. We have to reinvent the wheel in this instance, or just not drive anywhere.
Well, that's what we say, is that America is a third world country with a Gucci belt. And also, in addition to that, and again, I think this actually does speak to the Democratic leadership. And, we've been saying this again from the very beginning. The demented, it is not the same as what Trump and the Republicans and the governors are putting forward. However, the demented obsession with means testing, the rejection of programs like Medicare for All, even in this context, proves that these commitments are ideological. They're not just what they think is tactically safe, in my view. And that broader concern cuts along certainly party lines, that if we show Americans that there is a baseline of decency and security that can be provided for instantaneously, that would have major implications for labor organizing, for what people expected from the corporate sector more generally. And they don't want to do that.
Without a doubt. When I was a junior in college, John Benjamin and I and another friend, Charlie, went and did that backpack through Europe thing. And at one point we went into East Germany because you could go like on a day tour or something.
Wow.
And I remember going to an East German, I think it was museum, and going to the bathroom and using the toilet paper there. And I became convinced that to end the Cold War, the U.S., all they needed to do was to fly a C-130 transport plane and dump, some type of like nice toilet paper on East Germany, just like, Charmin or whatever it was. And within weeks, the wall would come down because people are like, we want that stuff. We want the nice toilet paper now that we know that it exists. Right. And I think that's
we want that nice social democracy.
There's no way in a million years, the way our government is structured right now, that if the Democrats came out and said, instead of expanding COBRA, let's expand Medicaid, that we would get it. But they don't want to do it. And this is building on your point. They don't want to put that out there because when the crisis ends, everybody's going to be like, well, wait a second. If it was a good idea then, why is it not a good idea now?
Exactly.
And they
it's
don't
as simple
want
as that.
To give people the idea that this is doable, and they're risking all of it to avoid getting to that point. And it's
100%. And that's why it is strategically incoherent, because when you get to the recommendations again of even people like Stanley Greenberg, the Democratic pollster I've been reading and mentioning, he's not necessarily talking about Medicare for all, but he is talking about seriously beefing up government programs, and they don't want to do that. I mean, just what we've been saying. I want to also recommend for people who are in quarantine and have the ability to do this. It reminded me of Comrade Detective. That's a very funny show. You familiar with that show?
No.
It's basically they do it as if they've discovered it in some archive somewhere. It's a new show. But the idea is that it's a found show, I think, from Romania in the 80s. And it's like a buddy cop adventure show, except they're two like earnest Soviet communist detectives. And somebody is sneaking in Reagan masks and blue jeans. And they've got to figure out what's going on. It's actually a really fun show.
Let's take a little flashback, shall we, for a moment? Just peek in one of the stupidest commentators that have an opportunity to express themselves.
Please.
I'm curious as to what Matt Walsh is up to these days. We're now all on our house like he is, talking out of our asses like he does. Here he was. Now this is, to be fair, this was almost 4 weeks ago. 4 whole weeks ago, when he was saying something really stupid that now in retrospect looks just as stupid. And look at that.
Every year,
before I even had a beard that looks like his.
That we allow people to drive their cars, 30 to 35,000 people will die. And across the world, it would be 1 million people or thereabouts. And there will be tens of thousands more, if not hundreds of thousands more, I don't know, who are seriously injured, maimed, or crippled in car accidents. We know that is the cost of having our cars. And yet, nobody says, let's get rid of cars. And so the calculation we have made, the bargain we have made, the deal we've made is those 35,000 dead are a price worth paying so that we can drive. We don't want to put it that way. We don't want to think of it that way. We're not saying that it would be worth it to actively kill 35,000 people to like appease the gods or something so that we can drive. That's not the point. Okay. We're not saying that we should go out and kill 35,000 people ourselves in order to drive. What we're saying is if people drive, 35,000 people or thereabouts will die. We don't want them to, but they will. And although we're very sad about that, we will accept that side effect. And then we bring that over to the COVID-19 discussion, and we say, okay, in order to preserve our economy, we know what we're willing to accept in order to preserve our ability to drive. What are we willing to accept in terms of a death toll in order to preserve our economy and our way of life and our livelihoods? our cars along with our homes and our retirement savings and the food in our fridge and everything else.